My brother stole $92,000 from me, and my mother helped him do it. And the worst part? I opened the door for him, knowing exactly who he was. I opened the door. I made the coffee. I answered every question he asked, and I watched him map my life from the inside and called it hope. That's the part that stayed with me longest. Not the number, not the fraud report, not even my mother's voice when she finally admitted she knew more than she should have. The part that stayed was this. I saw the danger come home, and because it wore my brother's face, I called it mercy. My name is Ryan Mercer. I'm 42 years old, a software engineer, and for most of my adult life, I believed that if I worked hard enough, stayed useful enough, and kept my life cleaner than the family I came from, I could build something solid, something separate, something my family couldn't get their hands around. For a while, it looked like I had. A house in Portland, good money, retirement accounts with real weight behind them, a life built carefully enough that it finally felt like mine. But some people don't look at stability and feel proud of you. They look at it and start measuring. Tyler had always been like that. Not dramatic enough to feel dangerous right away. Worse, he was the kind of man who let other people call him lost, while he quietly figured out where they kept their keys. He disappeared for 3 years before he came back. Not vanished in some cinematic way. He just stopped being reachable. New number, new girlfriend, new opportunity. Then no number, no girlfriend, no opportunity. Just rumors filtering back through my mother, Eleanor, who always delivered bad news about Tyler with the tone people use around cracked glass. He's trying. He had a setback. Don't be hard on him. That was her gift. She took damage and renamed it, until even the truth sounded unreasonable. If Tyler lied, he was ashamed. If Tyler stole, he was desperate. If Tyler disappeared, he was struggling. She had spent our whole lives laundering what he did into language the family could keep living with. And me? I was the oldest, which in my family meant I was the one expected to absorb what Tyler broke. Family familiarity is a terrible security system. It makes you call old patterns normal, and danger familiar. The night he came back, it was raining hard enough that the porch light blurred around him. He looked thinner than I remembered, pale, damp, softer around the eyes, just fragile enough to trigger the oldest reflex I had around him, guilt. "Ryan," he said, "I know I don't deserve to ask you for anything." That line should have sent me back inside. Instead, 3 minutes later, he was in my kitchen with a mug of coffee between his hands, and I was already doing what I had done my whole life, editing him into someone easier to forgive. Maybe disappearing had changed him. Maybe this time the apology meant more than the emergency behind it. Maybe I was finally seeing the humbled version of him my mother had been promising since we were kids. Or maybe, and this was closer to the truth, I was tired of being the man who said no and then spent the next week feeling like a monster. Tyler didn't ask me for money right away. That was the first smart thing he did. He asked questions instead. Small ones, admiring ones, patient ones. How do you keep everything so organized? How do you track all your accounts? How did you know what to invest in? How do you know who to trust with money? How do you keep from making mistakes? At the time, I thought he was trying to learn. Looking back, every question he asked me that week was a blueprint. He wasn't asking to understand my life. He was asking where the locks were. My mother helped make all of it feel normal. The Sunday dinners started again almost immediately after Tyler came back. No hard conversation first. No accountability. No boundary. Just an extra plate on the table, and my mother acting like grace itself had personally cleared him. One Sunday after dinner, she walked me to the door and touched my arm. "Thank you for helping him," she said. "He's the only brother you have left." It was such a careful sentence, tender on the surface, command underneath. Help him. Forgive him. Make room again. I said, "He's had a lot of chances." She looked at me with tired eyes and said, "And you've had more blessings than he has." That was my mother's worldview in one line. Nothing I built was ever fully mine. It was just proof I could afford to lose more. Still, I let him stay close. I let him use my old laptop one weekend at my mother's house because his phone couldn't handle an application portal. I let him sit at my kitchen table asking about budgeting tools. I let him linger too long near screens he didn't need to see. There were signs. A token request I ignored. A browser tab closed too fast. A joke about how he'd never be stressed if he had my setup. I laughed. That part still embarrasses me, because betrayal doesn't always hide. Sometimes hope just refuses to admit it's being watched. The twist came on a Wednesday morning in downtown Portland. I was at a notary office handling property paperwork for my mother, small end-of-life documents she wanted updated, because Tyler couldn't be trusted to show up on time for a free lunch, much less legal filing. A woman in a navy blazer checked my ID, reviewed the documents, then looked at me in a way that made the back of my neck tighten. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "before we proceed, there's a discrepancy tied to the financial authentication disclosures attached to this file." I frowned. "What kind of discrepancy?" She lowered her voice. "Your credentials appear to be active through a secondary behavioral pattern that does not match the authorized user profile." That sentence would have meant nothing to most people. To me, it was a siren. Then she made it plain. "Mr. Mercer, it appears your financial access is being shared by someone who has no authority to be there." I sat down without meaning to, and the second I did, I knew. The old laptop, the questions, the fake humility. The one evening he lingered too long in my office while I took a call. Tyler had not been rebuilding himself. He had been learning the shape of my locks. I pulled up the accounts right there in that office. Retirement activity, layered routing, staggered transfers built to avoid instant flags. $92,000 gone. 15 years of work. Not my whole life, but enough to change how I saw everything. I had not just been robbed, I had been studied first, by someone who knew exactly how I lived. That hurt in a different place. Anyone can steal with force. It takes intimacy to steal with patience. I called the bank, then a cybersecurity colleague who owed me favors, then my mother. She answered on the third ring, already sounding inconvenienced. "Ryan, I'm in the grocery store. What is it?" I asked one question. "Did Tyler use my laptop at your house while you were there?" Silence. Then, "He needed to print something." I closed my eyes. "Did you give him any access codes? Anything from my notes, my mail, my backup sheets?" Her voice got smaller. "He said he just needed help getting started. He said you had plenty. He said it would only be temporary." There it was. My mother had not just excused him. She had opened the gate. I asked. Did you know he was taking money? A longer silence. Then, I knew he was borrowing. Borrowing. Families like mine love that word. Borrowing is what theft gets called when the thief shares your last name. I did not shout. That mattered, because the old me would have raised his voice and then spent the next week apologizing for the tone instead of the betrayal. Not this time. This time I went cold. Not numb, not heartless. Precise. I spent the next 48 hours tracing everything. IP logs, device signatures, token replication, cached credential behavior, remote access timing. A sloppy malware layer Tyler had hidden badly because men like him always confuse nerve with skill. By Friday, I had evidence. By Saturday, I had counsel. By Sunday, I had a plan. Then I invited them both to dinner. My mother sounded relieved. Tyler sounded excited. That told me everything. I booked a private dining room downtown. Low light, expensive steak, white tablecloths. The kind of room people enter believing they matter. My mother wore pearls. Tyler wore a new blazer and the expression of a man already spending money he hadn't kept. He smiled when he saw me. "Ryan," he said, sitting down, "I'm glad we're doing this. We all need a reset." A reset. He said it like this was a business hiccup, not a betrayal. My mother reached for the breadbasket with trembling fingers and said, "I knew you'd do the right thing." There it was again, the family's script. The right thing had always meant the costly thing, the forgiving thing, the thing that required me to shrink while someone else stayed comfortable. We ordered. That mattered too, because I wanted them to feel exactly how civilized this would be. No shouting, no scene, no mess they could later use to make me the unstable one. A reckoning with table manners. Tyler started first. He had a plan, he said. He had direction now. He could make this right, if I would just give him time and maybe some structured support, his phrase, not mine. He could repay everything and prove this setback had changed him. My mother nodded like she had heard it already. I let him finish. Then I said, "I didn't invite you here to discuss options." He blinked. I nodded toward the empty seat at the head of the table. A woman in charcoal entered, sat down, and placed a leather portfolio on the linen. "My attorney," I said. Tyler's whole face shifted. Not fear yet. Calculation. I placed the evidence file on the table, not slammed, placed. Then I turned the pages toward them. Transaction logs, device signatures, authentication trails, the malware layer, the routing path from my laptop token to the withdrawal sequence, the exact amount, the exact timestamps. Tyler tried confidence first. "This proves access, not intent." My attorney answered before I could. "Then it's unfortunate for you that intent appears repeatedly in the recovered message chain." He went pale. My mother looked at the pages, then at me, like the truth had crossed a line. Tyler tried again. "Ryan, come on. We're family." I looked at him and said, "No. You used family as cover." He didn't answer after that. Instead, he made one last attempt at sounding reasonable. "I was going to pay it back. You know I was. You've always had more than enough. I wasn't trying to ruin you. I just needed a shot." There it was, the worldview beneath everything. My future, in his mind, was simply inventory being held by the wrong person. My mother started crying. "Please," she said, "don't do this to your brother." I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said the truest thing I had. "I'm not doing this to him. I'm doing it for the part of my life you both thought you could keep spending. Then I gave them two options. Sign the restitution agreement under legal supervision with monitored repayment, restrictions, and permanent separation from my accounts and devices, or face formal fraud charges that Tyler was absolutely not built to survive. No shouting, no insults, just consequence. Tyler stared at the pages for a long time, then at me, then away. That was the moment he finally looked the size of what he'd done. My mother called me cold. I said, "I'm not cold. I'm finally protecting the future I worked for." She cried harder at that, not because it was cruel, because it was true. Tyler signed, not dramatically, not bravely, just the way men sign when they realize the door they plan to use is actually a wall. I paid the bill on the way out. That mattered too. Not because I wanted to prove I could, because I wanted the evening to remain exactly what it was. A debt collected in full view of white linen and polished silver. 3 months later, I moved to Seattle. Not because Portland was ruined, because I wanted a skyline they had never looked at and thought belonged to them too. I bought a smaller condo with a narrow balcony and a clean view of the water when the weather cooperated. My kitchen is too modern. My plants are adjusting badly to the wind. The mornings are quiet. That helps. I cut Tyler off completely. With my mother, I did something harder. I set up a fixed monthly transfer through the bank. Enough for groceries, prescriptions, basic comfort. No cash, no surprises, no Tyler. Duty without access. Love without surrender. That is the closest thing to peace I've found. Sometimes she leaves voicemails, mostly crying. Sometimes apologizing. Sometimes still trying to explain why she thought I would understand. I do understand. That's the problem. I understand exactly how families turn one child into a backup plan for everyone else's weakness. I understand how guilt gets dressed up as loyalty. I understand how kindness without boundaries turns into permission. What I no longer believe is that enduring it made me good. Looking back, Tyler didn't just steal $92,000. He stole the last naive version of me. The one who still believed blood would eventually develop a conscience if I stayed patient enough. And maybe that's why I feel lighter now. Not because I won, not because he lost, because I finally stopped confusing access with love. I didn't abandon my family. I just stopped letting them spend me. And for the first time in my life, I stopped being available for people who only loved me when I was useful. On clear mornings, when I stand on the balcony of this new place and look out over Seattle waking up below me, I don't feel victorious. I feel exact, like I finally belong to myself. And if you've ever had to choose between love and self-respect, you already know what that costs. And once you've paid that cost, you stop offering discounts.